Welcome to the Entrepreneur Mindset Mastery Podcast, where we help you pull the weeds from the garden of your mind so that you can flourish in your life and business. With your hosts, entrepreneur coach Simon Page and business coach Robert Peterson. All right, welcome everyone to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Entrepreneur Mindset Mastery Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Robert and our very first... let's try that again, because this is actually Episode 2. We're recording Episode 2 before we record Episode 1. And make a mental note. We need to discuss before we wrap up after this. We need to talk about the actual structure of Season 2. Are we going with the 7 laws of the universe? Or are we going with the original visioneering?
Yeah, what you said.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's try it again. All right, fantastic. Welcome to Episode 2 of our second season of the Entrepreneur Mindset Mastery Podcast. My name is Simon Page, and with me is my co-host, Robert Peterson from Add Value to Life, and our very first and very honored guest. I am so happy to have here with us today, Mr. Kevin Carton. Kevin is Kevin is one of my coaches, and he took me from a place where I was literally struggling to even create what a vision might look like in my life, to full on practicing the law of attraction. And that is what we're here to talk about today, is the law of attraction. So Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm really thrilled to be here with both of you. We go way back years now for both of us, so I'm thrilled to have this conversation, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Looking forward to learning.
So let's jump right into the law of attraction, right? I mean, that's what we're here to talk about. And I know that it is a key fundamental building block of your entire coaching program. And it's also a way that you approach your life. Mm-hmm. So I guess for those who might be just tuning in, who haven't really gone down the path of studying the laws of the universe and how they apply to entrepreneurship, let's start with a conversation about what is the law of attraction and how does it work in the universe.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you were sharing, Simon, the first thought that popped in my mind was actually a quote from James Allen. I think it was James Allen, but I mean, because I saw that you guys have a quote of James Allen on the front of this podcast, like the intro. Is that like weeding out, or taking out the weeds of your mind? I'm pretty sure it was James Allen who said that we become what we think about.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's the whole basis of the law of attraction. And even, I don't know if y'all have seen the movie The Secret. I think that's one of the most popular introductions to the law of attraction for most people.
Yes.
I mean, it's been some time now and I don't hear much about it anymore, but it was like a phenomena 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I think it came out in 2006.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that really changed people's perspective on just what does it mean to have working with this law of attraction. And it really started out with, at least in my perspective, is just helping people realize that we do become and therefore attract what we think about. And so it starts with our thinking, but I think it goes much deeper than that, because we're not just beings that think. We also have emotions. We also have energy. We also have a physical body that we take action and do things with. So there's a lot more depth to the law of attraction, I believe, than just thinking. But it starts there, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned something really cool in there. And, emotions, energy, your spirituality. And so I wanted to ask you, do you see prayer as a manifestation tool in the law of attraction?
Yeah, it depends though, because it's talking about, what is the definition of prayer that we're talking about, because people have different definitions of prayer. And I think the most common paradigm of what prayer is, what most people think of prayer, especially if they actually don't practice prayer in some level, most people think is you're just asking God or the universe or the infinite for something. It's oh, please, let me have this, or give me this, or help me with this.
Please
Whereas
let the Cubs win the pennant.
Sorry?
Please let the Cubs win the pennant.
Yeah. Exactly. But I think true prayer and what the answer then on the side of yes, prayer is definitely a part of the law of attraction, is when we use what is a term I've heard it called as affirmative prayer, is where we're claiming the thing that we desire now and actually giving thanks for it as if it was happening now. That's definitely a big part of the law of attraction in my perspective. And that can connect definitely with prayer, is that if you're praying for something, but you're actually just, it's coming from a gratitude. It's like, thank you. I'm so grateful that this amount of money is on its way to me. I'm so grateful for that. This person that I desire is actually on their way into being in my life. Is like, there's more of an assuming of the feeling of the wish fulfilled, is another term that I've heard from a gentleman named Thomas Troward. He's an 18th century lecturer who began the whole movement that's called New Thought, which definitely is a whole part of the law of attraction too. So yeah, I'm going off on tangents. I think I'll stop there.
No, that's good.
We love Thomas Troward.
Nice. And not many people know about him, or at least that I've come across, like many people. But
yeah, we share the spirit of opulence on season 1 and have pretty good conversations about that.
Okay, great. So yeah, your listeners probably actually have the awareness of Thomas Troward. So sweet.
So with that said, we're talking about using the power of prayer, or asking the universe for what you want, the power of gratitude, and what was that, the phrase that you used to describe the feeling that something in the future is already there?
Like, yeah, assuming the wish fulfilled.
The wish fulfilled.
Yeah.
So I love that. I've enjoyed that perspective for a long time, but I just forgot it. So we're talking about like gratitude for the wish fulfilled. Is that, I'm just going to ask from a very plain standpoint, is that all there is to it?
No, definitely not. And I know you know that, Simon, but yeah, for sure. To the question of the podcast, yeah, to have this discussion, it's not at all.
Yeah,
I think that's where most people stop. And that's the challenge or the problem I think most people face. And I could break it down this way. There's 3 parts of the law of attraction. 2 parts most people are aware of, which the first being the desire of what you would love, like being clear on what you want to attract into your life. You were speaking that before, Simon. It's just like clarifying your vision, knowing exactly what you would love. And not, so for example, like not just like, oh, I want lots of money. The universe can't cash a check that says lots of money. You have to be specific. Yeah, exactly. Because lots of money to someone who is completely broke, lots of money could be $1,000. But $1,000 to a millionaire is really not a lot of money. And so it's perspective. So being clear about what it is, that's the desire. So that's the first part of the law of attraction. The second part is connecting with the expectation. That's what you were just speaking about. It's like the assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, imagining as if what would it feel like if that was already yours now, so that you're generating more of an emotional connection with that reality, because our emotions are our conscious awareness of the vibration that we're living in. And we don't attract what we want, we attract who we are. So that right there, that was a lot. So I would just break that down for a second as well. We attract who we are, is meaning that with the vibration that we're expressing out into the universe, we receive back. We live in a reflective reality. And so as we're tuning more into the emotions, which is the vibration, the emotions of what it's like when it's all done, said and done, it's like, I have that in my life, then it's that much more attracted to us. It's actually creating a magnetic pull. It's the electromagnetic part of ourselves. And this goes from the thoughts as the electrical impulse. We call that, the brain impulses, or the vibration that's created through the neurons firing in our brain. But that then travels in through our cerebral fluid in our brain, and then travels up and down the spinal cord, which then influences our vibration that we call a feeling. And that feeling doesn't end with our skin, our body. It travels way beyond that. And science, at least now, has proven that it's about 6 to 10 feet from our body that we can measure right now. But I believe it goes well beyond that. It just gets more subtle in terms of the energy. But that alone right there, that's like the electromagnetic connection that we have with everything around us. It's called our personal electromagnetic field. It's in the shape of what's called a torus, and it's around us all the time. And whether we know it or not, we're expressing an energy, and that's being reflected back to us. So the expectation, what we were just speaking of, yes, it's a major part, but it's definitely not all that's it, because there is that third part. And the third part, this is really where the rubber meets the road, I find, in my own life and working with clients, literally with anyone though, is if we do not keep our attention fixed on our desire and attention fixed on the emotion of what it would be like when it's all fulfilled, then it will never come into being, because so often we are clear on what we want. And at some level, maybe you're connecting with the emotion of like, all right, what would it be like if I have that love of my life in my life right now? Or actually, I mean, this is an entrepreneur podcast. So let's talk about like, oh my gosh, like my business is thriving. Like I have these employees, or like you're very clear. It's like, oh, we just did $100,000 in revenue this past month. Like that's the wish fulfilled. Like you're imagining what would that feel like? But if you only do that once, or even just let's say straight for maybe a week every day, it's really not going to do much. So you have to keep your attention on it over time, because things don't happen just immediately. It takes persistence. And I think many entrepreneurs know that persistence is a major key, but keeping the attention on what you want. Yeah. Keeping the attention
and consistency.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. But yeah, but with that, like that last part. So there's the three parts are desire or the intention. Then there's expectation, like really embodying the feeling of the wish fulfilled, but then keeping your attention on what it is that you want. And the other side, it's like two sides of the same coin, is if you keep your attention on something, naturally there's going to be something you're going to be doing by means of that attention.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're going to take action. You're going to act out what it is that you're so focused on. Otherwise, I mean, you're just literally sitting on a couch doing nothing, of course. But so there's the action component as well that is important, but we have to carry the energy of that wish fulfilled into the action steps that we're taking. I think that's the missing piece for most people in terms of the law of attraction.
So good. I mean, there's so much you shared in there that's so valuable.
I saw you taking notes, Robert. I'm glad you are. And I feel honored that way as well. Humble.
I actually, I wrote down what I remembered, but I want to see if you can remember the direct quote. You said, our emotions are something of the vibration that we're living in.
Yep. Our emotions are our conscious awareness of the vibration that we're living in.
Yeah, that is an amazing thought. I mean, we could talk the rest of the show on that. That is fantastic.
Well, and just based on that idea, it's an attitude towards life, right? You're in control of your life, right? I mean, obviously we follow James Allen, and so as a man thinketh, so he becomes.
Yes.
And so the question, and obviously we know the answers to these, so they come across a little weird, but
it's okay.
The idea of things happening to you versus things happening for you.
Yeah. I've heard that there's a great commencement speech by Jim Carrey. I think it was like 2014 he did this. Yeah. And he has that exact quote: is life is not happening to you, it's happening for you. And I totally agree with that. I personally take it one step further, is that life is happening through us.
Oh, so good.
Because it definitely incorporates the for you. Like life is happening for you, for your own evolution, for your growth, for your awareness. But life is actually happening through us. And life is for us when it is through us, obviously. But from that perspective, we also then take on our own personal responsibility that in any situation, it's like life is happening through me. And like we don't, create every single thing that is happening to us in our life. Because I say it this way, is that we are in a sea of 7+ billion other people who are manifestors, creators, creating their own reality. And so it's naive, I think, even to think that like, oh, it's all on me. It's just me. And I can't release any of that responsibility if something happens and it actually wasn't my own doing, because there are other people around us, right? Like, but that doesn't mean to say that you're not responsible still for your own actions, for your own thoughts, for your own energy and emotion in response. but most people are just reactive to situations, which of course congests the law of attraction. It just repels us from what we actually want if we're resisting for what is happening in our life. That's why that quote where you just said, Robert, is so great, because once you move from victimhood, that happening to me, to all right, it's happening for me and even through me. It's like, all right, like what can I change here? What can I choose in terms of my thoughts and emotions and actions that will create or attract what I want?
So let's chat about something that challenges a lot of people, in that you jump in the car just to run to 7-Eleven and you get rear-ended.
Yeah.
Well, how did I attract that into my life?
Yep.
Can you share what's the impact of this line of thinking?
Great question. And funny example, because my brother actually got he rear-ended just a month ago or 2 months ago. So, and real life, right? I've heard it put it this way, that especially when in that scenario, well, it's like that wasn't your own doing, right? It was someone else's lack of awareness or ignorance, or just not, actually aware as they're driving. But I've heard it this way, is that imagine if you just spent 10 more seconds brushing your teeth that day. Imagine if you just took maybe even just a minute after you woke up to meditate, that you didn't do that morning. You wouldn't have been behind that car, right? So at some level, we attracted that situation potentially, but at the very least, you can view this as, well, that happened in my life. I might not have created that, but at the very least, I'm creating the experience I'm having in response to that situation. So it's like, well, I could either blow up and get angry and being like, oh, this is ruining my day. This is bad. This is not good. Or you can open up and say, all right, first off, are we okay? Is everyone okay? That's what really matters the most, right? But then shifting your awareness to all right, what can I learn from this? Because maybe you do take that perspective. It's like, oh, I could have done something else for a minute extra this morning and then not have gotten that accident, but I was there. And I see it in this way. It's it's a kind of a hard pill to swallow when it comes to the suffering or the challenges, the quote unquote bad things that happen in life. But I truly believe that there's only one thing happening right now in every single one of us, our lives, and that is infinite intelligence. There's an organization to this universe that is mind-boggling. It's impossible, I believe, for our 3-pound brain to even comprehend the complexity and organization of this universe that is so beautiful. I take it from a scientific perspective. Even just talking about our physical body, there are literally, I think it's 50 trillion cells that come together to create this human form. All of that organization, and so much of it happening unconsciously in our subconscious, is just organization of this life that is expressing as us, as a human being. And that is happening just, we've been given the gift of life. And yet, here we are facing a car accident. Is oh, I didn't make this happen. This is not good. We label it, we place meaning on it, when what if that is actually exactly what you need to grow through? That's why I say life is happening through us. And that goes right along with just what we're attracting into our life. My mentor puts it this way, and this is one of my favorite quotes of all time. She says, the content of our life is the curriculum of our evolution. Content meaning whatever we're going through, right? Even if it's quote unquote bad, it's actually curriculum. And you think of curriculum, that word specifically, my mentor uses words very specifically. She chose that word on purpose. Curriculum. You think about going to school. You have to pass certain tests, certain classes in order to get a certain degree. You can't move on beyond that. So it's curriculum. It's necessary. And so we all have lessons to learn in this life. We all know that. But how often are we resisting some lessons when it comes in the form of that car accident, when it comes in the form of a bad month in business, when it comes in the form of an illness, and we don't actually gain the lessons, when if we were just much more awake and aware, we can actually gain those lessons and move forward, which is what life wants for all of us, I believe.
Well, I think it's just another form of laziness, right? When we put responsibility on somebody else, right? That's just the ultimate level of victimhood, right?
Yep.
If I'm not taking full responsibility for everything that's occurring in my life, then I'm blaming somebody else and I'm giving somebody else control, or I'm a victim at somebody else's whim. If, and so that attitude is so important, even when things happen to us that are outside of our plan or our control.
Yes.
We absolutely control our response and can find that positive, not spin, because I don't want to spin my life, right? But I want to truly face those things with a positive outlook.
Yeah. So I mean, I think you just said perspective, right?
Perspective. Yeah. One of the things that came to mind while you were talking about this is the Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, where he says that between stimulus and response lies our power to choose our response. And to what you were saying, Robert, absolutely. I mean, I think the choice of our response is determined by our perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And perspective is a choice. How do we choose to show up in the world? And if we choose to show up in the world, do we choose to show up as negative, bitter, or cynical, or do we show up as positive and optimistic and growth mindset? So
exactly.
I was just going to wrap up with, it all comes down to the personal responsibility of choice. Exactly.
It reminds me of a quote from Einstein. He said, "We all make one fundamental decision." Oh, usually it's unconscious, but this is why he says this, to see about making this decision consciously. We all make a fundamental decision about the universe. Is this universe friendly or is it not friendly?
Yes.
And that goes back to that infinite intelligence, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to say God hates me and it's all God's fault versus, the universe is for me and the universe is conspiring for my good.
Exactly. Yeah. And as you hold that perspective, this goes right back to the law of attraction, like the main components of it. As you're thinking from that perspective, you're generating a vibration in harmony with the good is on its way. The good always comes to me. I learn from things and I grow by means of it. And therefore your life will become that. And you attract greater and greater circumstances in your life.
So good. So for me, I guess that leads me to the highest level of character, the highest level of facing the world for me is unconditional love. How does unconditional love impact the law of attraction?
That's the foundation. It's everything. Because I've heard it said this way, is that everything is love. Like love is the only real thing in the universe.
Oh.
Because if you think of it, I take it in another scientific perspective, there's no such thing as darkness. There's no such thing as cold. Those are just experiences of a lack of light and a lack of heat.
Which can also be called a lack of vibration.
True. Yeah, it's exactly it. It's just a lack of an experience. It's not, there's no actual substance. There's nothing you can measure when it comes to darkness, except for, again, the lack of those photon particles that we call light. Same thing within heat and cold. Same thing, I believe, with love and hate or fear. And so I see it as the foundation of the law of attraction, because the only real thing I believe in this universe is love. And as we're opening up more and more to really living our lives from that kind of unconditional love that you're saying, that first off, it benefits ourselves, so that we're a stronger magnet when it comes to the law of attraction, because we're loving ourselves unconditionally when we mess up, or that we notice our attention is away from our desire, what we want to attract. But then also love is key component to actually keeping our attention on what we desire. Like I've heard the question asked, actually many of my clients ask me this, is like, how do I stay focused on my dream? How do I stay focused on the goal or the vision, the thing I want to create, right? Well, it's easy when you develop a greater love for it. And that goes right back to having a clarity of vision, because if you're crystal clear on what you want to create, and you could see it in your mind so much that you can feel it in your body, where it's translated into that emotion, that vibration, then it's easy to keep your attention on it. It actually takes no effort at all. In fact, that's really when the law of attraction is like, you're really in flow with it, when it doesn't even feel like effort. There's, of course, discipline of keeping consistent, but there's a flow with it. It's like that, I call it a divine tension, because there's all of these divine paradoxes in life.
Tension or intention?
Tension,
Okay.
attention. Yeah, like, or sorry, tension, a tension. Let's go with that. Like where there's like a tension, a pull to the opposites, right? Like that, I believe, is what really makes life worth living. Like really, like there's actually some substance to our experience rather than it all just being positive or all just being negative. There's this middle ground.
Well, if you don't have the opposite, then you can't experience the right. Without the negative, the positive is meaningless.
Yes.
And so we have to have the evil to understand the good. We have to have
Otherwise, there's no context.
Yeah, the wrong to understand the right. And
how can you be grateful for good when you have no experience with bad?
Yeah. So that's so powerful, and I like that divine tension, right? That and it's so necessary, and yet it's easy for us to question. Why does the infinite intelligence allow this, right? Why does evil exist? Why does bad? All those questions are so easy, and it seems like it'd be easy to just say, well, all that could be eliminated. But if it's eliminated, there's no tension, and without the tension, there's no growth. And so I really like that tension term, and love the fact that, right, that's just one of the other laws, that opposite, right? That for every positive there has to be a negative. The opposite has to be true. The opposite has to exist. And I love that it works for our doubts too, right? For every time you think, oh, I couldn't double my salary this month, the opposite has to be true. It has to be possible, right? For you to think. So not that we want to get off the law of attraction, because obviously that's our focus today, but so good. The things you're sharing are just so wonderful, and just appreciate your perspective.
I'm glad it resonates.
Oh yeah.
But we are definitely vibrating. We are on that.
I wanted to talk about, you were talking about love being the only real energy, and talk for a second, if you would, about your thoughts on, I've heard the statement that love, the opposite of love, is not hate, it's apathy.
Ooh.
And when you think about darkness is a lack of the vibration of light, and evil is the lack of the vibration of good. Apathy is the lack of the vibration of love.
Yes.
And I think people get hung up, and I know I asked you to speak on this, but I'm going to say this comment, and then I'd love to get your thoughts. People get hung up when they're talking about the law of attraction. They get hung up on this concept of, I don't even know what to ask for.
Sure.
Or I don't even know what my life is supposed to look like. And they have like this complete lack of a sense of clarity on the future that they want to build. Right? They have no dream.
Yep.
Or they haven't allowed themselves to dare to dream. And so, what do you say to a client who comes to you through your program and wants to build that vision, and they don't know how to express love because they're apathetic in their life?
Sure. Yeah, it's really, really great point. And I actually have never heard that, like the opposite of love is actually apathy, but I would totally agree, because from apathy, then it morphs, or just, there's definitely a better word for that, but it turns into fear or hate at some level, I think. Well,
that's what it's manifesting, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Apathy manifests hate.
Yep, exactly. 100%. So what I share, because you're 100% right. There's many people, I would say a good 30-40% of people that I work with in the very beginning, they have no idea what their dream really is. They have some idea of oh, that could be nice, that sure, but there's no real fire of oh my God, I would love that. I call it the yes factor. It's someone saying, yes, that is what I want, or I would love. So if someone doesn't have that, there's a simple principle, is you start with what you know for sure. Start with what you know for sure, because at some level we know what we would love. And that's the primary question too, is what would I love, of course, because that's different than what do I think I can have, or what do I see as potentially possible? Like looking back in my history of like, all right, this last year or this last month, I did this. So maybe I can have that in the next month or the next year. Like we often compare or build off of our past experience when the truth is we're not limited by our past experience, our history, who we've been up until now. Of course, we
Right.
can create whatever we want. And that's true thinking, I believe. Most people are running mental activity, is that they have ideas in their head, but those thoughts are coming from past conditioning and past experience. That's called mental activity. That's not true thinking.
We
True
call it
thinking,
ruminating.
yes, boom, right there. Another, we have words for this, right? But so true thinking comes from the question, what would I love? Not based on past experiences, not what do I think I can have, not based on conditions, like what do I really want? And then from there, and sometimes it's like sifting sand. Like if you're like looking for gold, like in the olden days, like you, and sometimes even now, like I'm not familiar with it, I've never actually done this myself, but like I know there's like the sand sifters, right? You take a bunch of sand and like you start to shake out the sand, and then the rocks or the potential gold or silver or metals like will then be there. So it's the same thing with our vision or just getting clear on what we want, is sifting out through our life. We have so much just mental chatter or just like um, things that are distracting us. I mean, there's so much entertainment, so much things going on in the world. Like we can often get so bogged down by the thoughts of others of like, oh, pay attention to this. So much stimulus coming from the outside world, when the only way to truly know what you would love is to go within.
Mm.
And as you ask yourself that question, sometimes it could be drawing like a blank slate. That's why you start with what you know for sure. Because here's what happens when you just start, when you just write something down, when you get clear, it's like, all right, this, I'm going to work with the law of attraction to attract this. Then being specific, all right, $1,000, $10,000. I want to attract 10 new clients. I want to attract that love of my life, or whatever it is. You get clear. And even if it's not like a really strong burning desire, it's something like, all right, I would like that. That sounds cool. Sounds great. As you're working on applying these tools or these principles, like the parts of the law of attraction, two things happen. First off, you grow, you get better at, of course, applying the law of attraction. But then the second thing that happens because of that growth is you get more clear on what really matters to you, like what you would really love, because you're evolving, you're growing, you're getting to know yourself more because you're turning within more and more often. And so as you get more connected to that, like yourself, like who you really are, then it just gets more and more clear. And so I my favorite word in the human language is discover.
Mm.
Because if you hyphenate the word discover, it truly describes this process. Is what you're doing is you're taking off the cover of what's already inside you. I personally believe that we all have, like, and been given by life unique dreams, goals, desires, visions, things for us to bring forth in this world and to create and to experience. We are just as unique as our thumbprint. No, not
Mm.
one human being on the planet has the same thumbprint. And
Love
so
it.
I call it our soul print. And so we all have that, but it's the work of uncovering that. And as you just do this process, like you start with what you know for sure, which kind of seems like it's a cop out. But it's actually a subtle way that we often hold ourselves back, is like we say, I just need to know first what I would love. I need, because the principle for number one is getting a clear desire, right? It's like,
Right.
oh, I'm not sure yet. So let me just spend some more time. That time is wasted, or at least it's not used in the most expansive way by means of growing ourselves. And therefore we're always waiting. We get into
Mm.
the pattern of like, oh, like I'll get clear eventually, like sure, maybe down the line. But my experience has become this, that action breeds clarity.
100%. 100%. I love
And
that.
we were literally just talking about this before, is like the challenges in life, right? Like the things that don't go well, you learn from them. That's exactly this process. But so often we're stopped at the start because we're just not just choosing something and going for it.
Mm.
And I know that you have like some background in science.
Yes.
Um, I know that you went to college for one of the sciences. Do you
Yep.
have any experience with a microscope?
Yeah, I have.
You ever heard of a microscope with autofocus?
No.
It's because it doesn't exist.
Okay.
Clarity is an iterative process.
Mm,
You never jump from confusion to clarity in one step.
yeah.
And so when you talk about get started, That's 100% the first step of the process. You'll never achieve clarity until you say, well, what would I like?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what would make that better?
Yep.
Okay, how could I improve that? Now you're starting
Exactly.
to get clarity.
Yep.
And it's that slow bringing it into focus with the little vernier knobs on the side.
Mm-hmm.
That's what gets you the clarity to build, this is my dream.
Yep. Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
gets with the yes moment.
Yep.
It's
100%. Honestly, Simon, when you said like, have you ever heard of a microscope with autofocus? I thought you had a new product coming. I was like, that kind of sounds cool.
what are you plugging on the podcast, Simon?
We are looking for sponsors, so you never know.
No. No, you can't look at something through an optical amplifier, telescope, microscope, doesn't matter. As long as it's not electronically, because the electronic autofocus is still iterative. It's just doing it so fast we can't perceive it.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
So take that out. And if you're going through an optical process, the process of going from blurry to crystal clear it's an infinite line.
Yeah. It's a readjustment continuously.
Yeah. And so go ahead, Robert.
Well, I was just going to say, in that reflection inward, right? That so much of this is that inward reflection, and so looking in itself when you're first starting is something that we're not taught, right? It's something that, and so that can be a little hard to figure out, and you only do that through action, right? Through actually, practicing that mindfulness. One of my guests recently shared the idea of fasting the mind. And so, because you mentioned all of those inputs, right? We have all of these inputs all around us. And that meditation is really just the process of fasting the mind, right? 5 minutes of sitting quiet and just focused, on your breathing, typically, because the breathing is the one thing you get to keep doing.
Yep.
Or at least I suggest you keep doing. And it allows your mind to inhale, exhale, and for those 5 minutes, you cut off all that crazy input, and then it allows you to actually, what do I really want?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you're asking the mind with the clean slate a little bit, right? You're giving yourself the best chance of that inward reflection. And I think, like you said at the beginning, you just have to keep planting that seed, right? For me, it's plant that seed at night, right? What do I really want as I fall off to sleep, and then wake up in my journal? What do I really want? And of course, when you start getting the answers, you've got to honor them.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Because if you don't honor them, you don't write them down, you don't do something with them, the brain's going to be like, you don't really care.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else gets it.
Right. That's going to move on to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really do like that soul print, right? Uncovering what's already inside you. For me, it's that I believe all of us were implanted with a purpose to serve humanity in some way. And so that soul print is such a neat term for that. So thank you for sharing that, because
you're welcome.
Just uncovering what you were created for is so powerful, right? And then it can light you on fire, because there's just this thing inside you that's like, oh, it just feels right.
Yep.
That's who I am.
Exactly.
Yeah. So good.
I believe it's alignment right there.
So we understand that we need clarity. We understand that we need consistency, Kevin. What would you say to somebody who has started on this path? They've begun building their vision. They understand what they want, or at least they're moving in the right direction. And then they just don't seem to be getting any traction. Right? Some people have, for whatever reason, they have doubt, or they have fear, or they have roadblocks, internal or external. What do you say to someone who is like, I'm doing everything that you're saying, but it's not working?
Yep. That is one of the most insidious weeds that will choke out the life of your vision growing. And the reason why it's so insidious is because it seems very logical.
Yeah.
There's evidence. It's like, hey, I've been really focused on this for the last 2-3 weeks, the last month, or the last 3 months. And sure, I could have done better. And you obviously like course correct, but like if someone's saying it's like, yeah, like it's just not working, then at some level, that thought alone is, when is this going to happen? Why isn't it happening right now? Like that thought is actually a weed to be choking out the life of the vision, because doubts, worries, fears, they're a very normal part of our life. But when it comes to such as an insidious thought like that, because there is evidence, it could be the one thing that is stopping someone from actually really activating and then receiving the benefits of working with the law of attraction, because it's so insidious, again, because it's so easy to think that thought. It's like, man, like I've been doing so much work and getting discouraged about that. That right there is a vibration that is repelling the good that you want. Like, it seems so straightforward, but like when it's said out loud, but when we're in those kind of thoughts, like I've been there many times in my life. It's like, I feel like I've been doing this work. Like, why isn't it working? But as soon as I'm aware and noticing, like, oh damn, if I'm now just becoming aware of that thought, how many times have I been thinking that thought unconsciously? And that being the barrier or the repelling of the good that I'm working on creating. And so that alone right there, first off, that's one, like a way in which you can weed out the garden, like really like just create more space for the growth of your vision. But one other thing I remind myself personally, when I'm faced with a thought like that, or some challenge work where it's really felt like I've been doing the work and like not really getting the results I've wanted. Obviously, the very straightforward part of it, which I assume that everyone would be doing, is just to self-reflect on like, what could I be doing more of? What could I be doing less of? Like really course correcting, of course. But on top of that, I always remind myself of an analogy, which, Simon, I know you know this, but Robert, maybe you've heard this as well. It's an analogy about how a certain type of Chinese bamboo tree grows. And so when you first plant this certain type of Chinese bamboo, you water it, you give it the right environment, perfect environment, like the nutrients in the soil, the right amount of sunlight, the right amount of darkness, all the perfect environment. First year, it grows only 2 inches. When granted, this tree will, this stalk will grow literally dozens of feet tall in its lifetime. Yet in the first year, it's only 2 inches. You could be thinking, if you're not aware of the growth path of that bamboo tree, the thought could be, am I not doing something right? Is it too much water, too little water? Like, is it not getting the right amount of sunlight? What's going on? There's some
Don't dig
problem.
it up to find out.
Exactly. But here's the crazy thing. That happens again, only 2 inches of growth for the next 4 years. First 4 years of life, it only grows a total of 8 inches. Yet in that 5th year, because it was given the right environment the entire time, then it grows 11 feet. So there's that exponential growth, but it came after a long period of time of giving the right environment. So that's why I was calling out that one thought of, why isn't this working? That's a doubt that cuts out the life of the dream. And if we keep persisting in that, it'll always just repel the good that we're actually after. So it's just a message I remind myself of. It's just, all right, I'm just early on in my process. I'm going to
trust. It's the law of gender, right? I mean,
exactly.
You don't know what the gestation period of your dream is.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And so the more you can learn to trust, which I want to share something with you all that I only discovered about like 6 months ago. Wow. And it was an epiphany for me of how to trust the universe more, how to trust the process more.
All right. I'm writing notes.
Yeah, for sure. So it blew my mind when I first thought of this, because I never heard anyone share this. It didn't make sense to me at first, but then it really dropped in. The way we learn to trust the universe more is by, first off, obviously everything we've been talking about is knowing, having your clear vision, keeping your attention on it, like doing the work, like taking action. But the other component that I was missing that I didn't realize was how I trusted the universe the most was, it's a principle called leaving no stone unturned. When you leave no stone unturned, meaning you're actually like, you're willing and have been doing everything, not most, but literally everything that you know to do to create the result that you want to create, and you're doing all the internal work as well, then you can let go because you are doing your part. Like, obviously there's the part of the universe that put to play to bring to you what you want in a miraculous way, which I think most people in the world have experienced to some degree, like some synchronicity, something happening, quote unquote, out of the blue because they were in alignment with it. That of course happens. But When you are doing everything you can do, both internal work and external work, the action, then you can like fully on let go because you're doing everything you can. Like it's not like you're leaving anything on the table. And most people are, though. That's the nuance. Some people have trouble trusting the universe because they know internally there's a big step that they can take. There's a leap of faith they can make. There's some step that they can do that they haven't done yet, probably out of some fear or uncertainty or unsureness or maybe some insecurity. Like there's some level that we know that we're not fully showing up and doing our part in life.
Yeah, one of the best examples that I give in coaching is asking a client, you know something you could do to live healthier. All of us do, right? All of us know something that would help us live healthier, either exercise more, eat something different, and are you doing that? So the gap is between your knowing and your doing. And so what you're saying is the one way to trust the universe more is you do everything you know. Do everything in your power in alignment with that dream. And if you're doing all of that, absolutely, there's no reason that what you're asking for won't come to you.
Exactly. Because
there's hard. That's why they call it work.
Exactly. 100%. In fact, Wallace Wattles in The Science of Getting Rich says, thinking truth in the presence of opposing circumstances is the hardest work in the world. So literally the first part of the law of attraction is having your desire partnered with that third part of keeping your attention on it so that the feeling is still there and generated. That alone is the hardest work in the world. But that's the like in terms of trusting the universe, those are the first two components I find is that you're clear on your desire and then you're working on generating the vibration in harmony with that. It means it's like you're assuming the wish fulfilled and you're taking action from there. And in that last part, doing all that you can do, knowing that you're doing all that you can do, then trust comes easy. Because then think about this, when that doubt comes to your mind, it's like, oh, like, why isn't this working for me? Am I missing something? Like immediately you can tell yourself like, no, actually, like I'm doing the work. Like really, these are the steps is clear on what I want, connecting with the vibration, and I'm taking an action. I'm doing what I can do. It's like, all right, then all I have to do is just trust, lean back, relax, let go, trust.
So we've mentioned it a few times, but how do you keep what you want in the front of your mind?
Well, definitely one part of that was what I shared before about like having that burning desire for it. And over time that will develop because it's easy to keep something in the front of our mind if we would love it. Like give you an example. I can think back when I first met my fiance that's news because Simon, Robert, we haven't talked in a while. I proposed last July.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And so thinking back to the beginning of our relationship, sorry?
I'm guessing she said yes.
Yes, she did. She absolutely did. Yes. So, but think back to I'm thinking back to the first few months of our relationship together. I was infatuated with this woman. I could not get her out of my mind because I was so interested in her and I wanted to learn more and I wanted to just grow more together. Like obviously there was the easy to keep that in front of in my mind because I had an interest in that. Like there was a desire there. So it's kind of simple, but the action step that we can take to that when it comes to say something that we want to attract, how can we keep it more in front of our mind is build a bigger desire for it. Mm-hmm. And then you ask yourself the question, all right, well, what could I do to build a bigger desire for what I would love? Could be coming with, all right, clarity. What would I do when all that is said and done? Like, how would I feel? Like all the things, again, we've been talking about. But the other thing is personally for me, myself, I give it's discipline is the other answer, is keeping in the front of your mind is discipline. And personally for me, what that looks like is connecting or reading my vision statement, which is my version of what the clear vision or the clear life that I want to create, reading that on a regular basis. And I'm not perfect at this. It's not every day, but it's most days that I'm reading the vision, even though it could seem repetitive, especially because I have my vision that I work with the law of attraction with. It's a year vision at some time, and so in a given month, after a month, I notice my energy kind of potentially can go downward because it's this just, it is what it is. Right. But to really work on refreshing the energy of all right, if I would really love this, if this was actually happening in my life, how would I feel? And the more you keep your attention on it, because our feelings follow our thoughts. That's why I'm mentioning discipline, because most people are waiting for the feeling of being ready or feeling connected with the vision or feeling connected with what they want. But sometimes it takes that persistence. It's I'm going to show up every day for myself to remind myself, what is my dream? What would I love? What would that feel like? And that is not easy to do, to have the discipline.
When the action precedes the feeling, right?
Mhm.
It's you've got to take action to get the feeling.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're just going to be sitting still.
Yeah.
So I like that you read the vision statement. I mean, I think back to the number of people that have read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, but how many people have done the 6 steps?
Right.
And really, that's what the 6 steps are: is clarifying your burning vision, commitment to the action. Right? What are you going to give for it? So, I want this. I'm going to do this for it by this date.
Yep.
And then you read that every morning and every evening. And the difference between the people that read Napoleon Hill's work and have success and the people that read Napoleon Hill's work and feel like they wasted a day and a half is those 6 steps.
Yep.
And that's really what it is that's keeping your vision front of mind. Put it on the bathroom mirror, put it on your bed nightstand, and read it right before you go to bed. Imagine if you plant that vision right as you go to sleep every night. Whoo! What is your subconscious going to do with that while you're sleeping?
Exactly.
Yeah. Go on.
I just wanted to say, isn't it incredible how simple it is, right?
Yeah.
Which thank God, because if it was any more complex, I don't think anyone would do it. but it's so simple, but it's just the discipline. It is difficult. There's challenge to it because you're shaking up the status quo, but it is very simple. It's just a matter of having, again, that desire, that discipline to then do what is known to do. This is not new either. It's just been codified. Say like Napoleon Hill, like really started to codify like what it takes to have success in the world. And now, I mean, it's a whole industry because of his work. So it's no longer a question. It's just a matter of, will you?
There it is. And it's pushing against that comfort zone, right? Because I love Mel Robbins recently, she's been pushing, right, that motivation is crap, right? Like the idea that because our comfort zone is always going to keep us where we are. That's its job. It wants to keep us where we are.
Yep.
And to push against that is what takes motivation, but it's going to be uncomfortable. It requires discomfort to get out of your comfort zone.
Yep.
And the people that are willing to do that work, and most of it's thought work, right? Because our comfort zone is only in our head. It's not a real thing. There's not a circle around us keeping us in a chair, right? It's in our head.
Yep.
And if we do that thought work to get that expanded, right? It never goes away. Our comfort zone's always going to be there. It's designed to keep us alive, right? And I always say, like, it's true. The lion is right outside the door waiting to eat you. And that's what your brain's going to keep telling you about public speaking, about getting online live, about all the things you need to do to grow your business. The lion's going to eat you. But of course, no, it's not.
Yep.
Right? We haven't seen a person eaten by a lion, well, since that one escaped in the zoo. But the truth is, you've got to tell your brain it'll be okay. Yep. I'm not going to die. And let's go prove it, right?
Exactly. And I also want to say that's the power of having support too. I mean, Robert, I know you know this because you're a coach yourself. Simon, I'm not sure because it's been a little while since we talked if you do coaching, but I know you are a coach yourself. Like it's literally so powerful to have someone in your corner reminding you of this, which is why this is an amazing podcast that y'all have started and have like season 2, like, because that's something that someone can come back to if they resonate with you and have the repetition of these truths. It's not that we don't know it. It's just that so often we don't remind ourselves as much as we need. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful.
And that's a great segue as we're coming into the last few minutes of today's podcast. I would love to invite you, Kevin, can you share a few minutes about what your coaching program is about for our listeners? And we can, feel free to drop your link. And if people resonate with you and what you're saying, then, maybe we can send some people your way who you guys can work together.
We'll also put that in the description too, so that they can find
Excellent.
the link in the description and make sure that they can reach out to you.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And yeah, it's as simple as my website, kevincarton.com, that anyone can go and check out, which to be fully honest, I definitely need to update that website. Doesn't have like current offerings, but yeah, right. But the first program I work with all my clients with, it's generally the starting place, is a program called Dream Builder. And it's a 3-month process that I take people through to get clear and what they would love, which is called the blueprinting process. Then bridging, which is the second part of this program, where you start to connect with that vibration, which is a lot of letting go. So not many people really like do that work, because it's always so much of like, all right, what else do I need to do, or new things. It's like much looking forward, but a lot of times we have to let go of like the fear. Sometimes it's like senses of lack in life, or even at some point is like resentment toward ourselves or others. Like that kind of negative energy holds us to this normal life we've always been living. So the bridging process is up leveling our frequency, letting go of a lot of things that are not serving us. And then the final part in that program is building, like actually focusing on the things that help us in building the dream, like working with our intuition, forming a mastermind group, and many other things. But that's like the flagship program I always take my clients through. And so, yeah, it's the Dream Builder program. It's 3 months. And then something new I would love to share with y'all, because just having an opportunity in the space. So I appreciate that question, Simon. The space for this is a program I'm developing, which I really feel is like my baby. It's called the Soul Building Academy. And this program is a year-long structure of support I'm putting together to help people get more connected and masterful at working with the 5 levels of their being. Because we all have these 5 levels. Most often just people aren't really aware. And which I'm thrilled in the last like several decades, obviously with Napoleon Hill's work, the first 2 levels are much more, like we're much more masterful at, which is the physical body and the mental body. Somewhat the emotional too. That's the 3rd level of our being. So we have the physical, mental, and emotional. Those are much more understood, much more recently in the last, again, several decades. But something that is really, I'm thrilled that this is coming out a lot more and more people are interested in, is the next levels of our being, which the 4th is our energetic body. It's often known with the chakras, but it's also about like letting go of trauma, because there's a whole book on this called The Body Keeps the Score. There's a lot of work that we have to do in terms of healing to actually really activate these more mental workings with these laws, like the law of attraction. So me and my colleague are building this out for that level of depth. So there's the energetic body, and then the final one is our light body. And this is really where I'm stepping in as like the spiritual coach and just supporting people and connecting more with their spirit and like their soul and who they really are.
Wow.
And ultimately connecting with God, the infinite, by means of that, because that's the direct point of connection. And many names for it, like higher self, authentic self, like many different levels. But so it's a year-long structure of support to support people in mastering those levels of our being: the physical, mental, emotional, energetic, and light body.
Love it.
That sounds so exciting.
Yeah. So with that said, if someone is listening and resonates, the only way I actually can have a conversation with someone about this is by email, because it's not on my website. It's literally just coming out in the next month. So that's what I was saying. I need to update my website, but anyone can message me from the contact page on my website. So yeah.
And it's Kevin Carton, Carton.
Yes. Like a milk carton, egg carton. Yeah. Kevin Carton. Yes.
So there was room for that joke in there. I thought that's got to be his middle name, right?
No.
So you mentioned egg carton. I just
no. There is a joke though. My middle name is Francis, so my initials are KFC.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Personally, I actually can't remember the last time I even had KFC, but yeah, I love my initials.
Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. What a great conversation. What a pleasant soul you are just to hang out with for an hour. I know that I feel amazing and just energized and excited. So thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. And thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning in. This has been the Entrepreneur Mindset Mastery Podcast, and we will see you next week.